What's going on? My name is Marcus Whitley, and this is Good Behavior. Now, you can find me on all social media at I am Marcus Whitley and find any of my books, Both Sides of the Street, Choices and Consequences, Greatness Under Pressure, and Battling Demons, all on Amazon. Now, in this episode, I have a special guest with me, which I'm very excited about because she not only did a book review for my newest book, Battling Demons, but she also got me my first radio interview as an author. Now, I'm proud to introduce Siobhan Mayers.
Siobhan Myers, yep. Thank you for having me, no problem. Thank you for having me. I'm a licensed mental health counselor. I'm also a clinical director for a substance use agency and mental health, so we do dual diagnosis. And I'm the radio host for Talking Wellness on 97.9 FM, Worcester's Community Connection. So I am really excited to come back on here and work with you again. We definitely had a good vibe up there on when you were on Talking Wellness, and I was really proud to have you up there because I think, presentation is everything, and people need to understand your story and where you're coming from, and to know that life is not always starting out as always being good. You can get through your battles, battle your demons, and be successful in life. And I think, and that's good for a lot of people to know.
Yes, it is. And I'm not going to lie, I was very nervous. And
It's like 1 hour, right?
when I got up there, I expected it would be, okay, maybe 10, 15 minutes. And then when I heard break and then, we're going back in, and then it ended up being an hour, I'm like, oh, wow,
Yeah.
we really got to go over everything.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's important to know the backstory of everything. I think for most people, there's so much to tell, right? And even when I was up there and I did my interview with Ernest, the producer, it's just like it's so much more to get out there. I mean, I could have went on for over an hour.
Yeah.
So I think, people need to hear the story. They need to hear the full story. They need to know, what you've been through, how did things begin, where you're from, just really getting everything. It's really important.
I mean, it was a great time up there. And you guys made me feel comfortable, and
Yeah.
I really enjoyed it. So
Yeah.
I do appreciate that.
Absolutely. And come back anytime. But I'm happy to be here on your podcast. So, what mental health, what is it you would like to know? What would you like me to let the viewers know about mental health and that sort of thing?
Well, the first thing I'd like to know is what causes mental health? Is it hereditary, or is it something you develop over the years?
It's both. It's both. I think mental health, when I'm sitting with my clients, and this is where the medication piece comes in, there's the genetic component where there can be chemical imbalances in the brain that might cause depression, where they can't help it, even if they're in a positive environment. And that can be if your mother's had depression, your father's had depression, and you may need medication to help with that and level it out. Then there's situational, where if someone dies that you love, or you lost a job, those type of things can cause depression for a short period of time until the situation is over. And some people may need to be on medication for that for a short period of time just to get through it, to get out of bed and to be motivated to do things. I also think environmental wise, there's a lot of learned behavior. So if you have if you're around someone who has that down energy and they're very depressed and they're not happy, you tend to take on that, right? You start to kind of imitate or carry that same energy, that same vibe. So that can also be a factor as well.
Okay. Now, are there any cures for mental health?
I want to say, I wouldn't use cure. I would want to say this tolerable, and we actually help people cope. So with the medication piece for people who have that hereditary component, we may have them get on medication and be able to cope that way. That's something that may not always go away. If someone dies that someone really loves, you're never going to really forget about that person, but you find a way to deal with the fact that the person is no longer in your life. Yeah. And you still, if you think about that person or a death anniversary may come up, you still may feel sad from that. You don't have to stay in the same state of depression or anxiety for a long time. You can come out of that. But it's just life happens, things happen, and we have to be able to, I guess I want to call it growing pains. Like if you go through your first breakup, that sort of thing, that might stick with you, but you're able to go through life and get into other relationships, and you may encounter the same thing, but you may deal with it differently.
Okay. Now, with so many different ways to cope with mental health, do you feel, or would you prefer like a therapy type method or a medication type method?
I would say therapy first. The best approach is just to see what the client can do first, for the next couple of weeks. And if the person is not able to get out of bed, journal, kind of, really incorporate those coping skills throughout their day, then we may say, okay, this is we're not making progress. We've switched the coping skills many times around. Let's see if we can get you some medication to at least help you implement these things in your life. And once you have a handle on that, you don't have to be on medication forever if you don't need to. You can eventually come off of it once you got a handle on getting a groove, getting out of the bed, going to the gym, going to work, being productive, that sort of thing.
Okay. So, what are the most common behaviors that you have seen dealing with mental health?
Oh boy.
I know there's a lot.
There is a lot. And I'm working in a dual diagnosis, partial hospitalization program. So we have a mixed bag of everything. But the most common one I would say is anxiety and depression. And people may call that they have bipolar. Sometimes they're seasonal, bipolar. Once October hits, you start feeling down. And then once April comes along again, there's that cycle of the weather changing and people starting to also get emotional and that sort of thing. Then there's the manic type, where you're just manic, you can't sleep, you can't eat, you're spending your money, you're not making the best decisions. So those two things. And I think it can be very confusing because someone who has depression can easily, the symptoms can relate to bipolar, even though there's bipolar depression. And then same thing with anxiety where you get the manic stuff coming in, being anxious and not knowing what to do and pacing and not being able to sleep. That can also fall into it. And so a lot of the times what we try to do is really pinpoint like what it is and really break it down throughout the sessions to say, okay, you do have bipolar 2, you do have bipolar 1, you have anxiety and depression, that sort of thing.
Okay. Now, I know you said you work at the radio as well.
Yeah.
So how did you get into that?
I was interviewed by Ernest. He reached out to me on LinkedIn, and he asked me to be on the show for an interview regarding mental health. And after that, I guess it was a really good interview. I got a lot of views. I guess I did really well, and he asked if I could take over the show. I was co-host at first, and then eventually I became host.
Okay, so you went from doing an interview to then co-hosting to then now running your own show.
Yeah, and I swear I manifested that, right? Because
so you wanted to do radio.
Yeah, because in the back of my mind, being in the field, it's like, okay, you do the same thing day in and day out. And then, like the day to day is not predictable because you're dealing with different people, you're dealing with new enrollments, so you're dealing with different personalities all the time. But I'm like, maybe I should do something social media wise, right? I've stayed away from it for a long time. I didn't really jump into it right away, but, that opportunity came along the way it was supposed to. So instead of me doing something like a podcast or whatever, I got the radio show, which is fine. I'm excited about it. And it fits into my schedule. It's once a week. Yep.
So how long have you been doing it for?
I'm coming up on a year. Almost a year. So.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm almost at the halfway point a little past the halfway point of doing this podcast.
Yep.
I want to say it was, June 1st I had started. Mm-hmm. So almost there.
Yeah, almost there. I think talking wellness, it fits because you do need it's around mental health. And that's what I do. And I have over 7 years of experience in the field. So, I was nervous at first. I was nerve-wracking at first because going up there, you're like, oh, I'm going to be on the radio every Tuesday. And you're like, what am I going to say or do? And, you just pull it together. It just flows naturally. You just go up there. I think as a therapist, when we think about fear, because I waited a while to respond back to Ernest about doing the interview. And I'm like, who is this guy on LinkedIn bothering me? I don't know. I just didn't understand it. And then I said, man, this might be an opportunity. And I said, well, what's holding me back? Like, what's the fear, right? So, what's the worst that can happen, right? And so I just went in, I said, I'll do it. I'm getting my flowers doing this. Everyone deserves their flowers at a certain point. The universe threw that at me, and I was receptive to it, and then look what it turned into.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
been doing it a long time now, so this.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and I think, with respect to this as well, like, you're giving back, right? You're pouring into other people because a lot of the things that we do talk about, people have to pay for.
That is true. So I
That
mean,
is an hour session.
so giving back and doing that for free and doing this is something that will catch more people's attention too, because a lot of people are intimidated by, oh, I don't want to go to therapy, or
Yeah.
like they get discouraged by it.
Yeah, therapy is really, it is very discouraging because, and it can be, and people have every right to feel that way because all of those feelings that you've been holding back for years, that you didn't want to really acknowledge, that you wanted to ignore, that we were in denial about, has to come to surface. And if you get the right therapist, they will kind of help you work through that, but you do have to open the wound again and then really work through it, really put some salt in it, like I said in my interview, because you're going back, you're digging back, we're pulling back the layers, and you have to confront it head on in order to deal with it and heal. Everything just sitting there, you're not going to heal. It's just going to be bottled up. And like I use the example like a soda bottle. What happens when you have a soda bottle and you shake it up? It explodes. Now, all those feelings that you have there, they don't really go anywhere, like I said before. It's just everything piles up on it because life continues to happen and move forward. Nothing is stagnant, you know? And eventually, there's going to be something that tops the cake. And you might get mad that someone bumped into you by accident, and you may just explode, right? And it may not be that the person bumped into you, it's all and everything that you've been holding on to, but that one person triggered everything.
Yeah, I noticed for me, like uh, therapy didn't work for me. I mean, that might also be the therapist that I went to, but when I was in the process of writing my books, sitting there and writing out detail for detail, it made me relive everything. And that like really made it emotional for me.
Yeah.
But after I was done, like I felt better about it.
Yeah, yeah,
But like the process was long because I had to sit there and relive each day and each memory, and like it was tough. But like I feel better, and now being able to share my story, knowing
Yeah.
that other people have gone through the same things, and I might be able to help them, like that makes me feel good and makes it worth it.
yeah. Everyone, has a testimonial, and it's very emotional. You have to go back and you have to really kind of work through that. And if you need to share it, shed a tear or two, then that's fine. I think that's the most appropriate way to go about it. And then you feel better. You've gotten it out of your system, and now you work through it. And you'll feel better each time that you work through it. And next thing you know, it doesn't even matter. It doesn't necessarily mean it goes away, but it's not going to impact you the way it used to in a negative way, right? You've learned from it. You understand it. You know, you understand how other people have put you in awkward or negative situations, and you're learning to put yourself first when you do that.
Yeah. Now, I know like mental health is a serious issue, but there's a lot of people who use it as a crutch. Now, when they're fully capable of doing things, but they give up because things get hard and they don't want to do it.
Yeah.
So, how would you approach cases like that? Like, what kind of advice would you give them?
Usually, the advice I would give people is because we are used to operating a certain way all the time. Remember, mental health can also be a habit in which the way we carry ourselves. So, if you're used to being down and out and you're used to being anxious, being happy and less anxious may seem really weird. It may seem foreign. And because you've been in such a state for a long time, you normalize that. And so, a lot of the times in therapy, we have to unnormalize that and say, like, that's not the way you should be. That's not the way you have to be, and to really adjust out of that state to know like everything's great. It's like you talk to clients and they're like, I can't believe I had a great week. And I was just waiting for one bad thing to happen. Like I just knew it was happening. I knew it was odd. And so it's like, okay, well, you had a good week, but maybe things happen in the way that you didn't realize that you were more better able to deal with than before, right? You know, maybe those things that might have happened that are not a big deal like they were when you weren't in the best state. But a lot of, going back to what you've said, a lot of what we try to do is really normalize and help guide people out of that state to let them know that they're okay. And that's a big part of therapy.
Yeah.
You know, moving out of the state of depression, moving out of the state of anxiety, moving out of fears of everything going wrong because that's how you felt the world was at one point. It's really a change in perspective.
Now, like, one of the things that I always tell people is get comfortable with being uncomfortable. And that's something I try to preach to everybody, because if you stay inside of that box, you're never going to be able to grow.
Right, correct.
And like, oh man, I just lost my train of thought.
Right, get comfortable with being uncomfortable, right? And that just means don't think that everything stays the same, because there's evolution, right? And evolution, and there's another word I can't think about it, but evolution, I always talk about, it happens. Not everything stays stagnant. And a lot of people try to just sit still and stay in one state for a long time. You start to feel the pressure of being forced to move on, right? And to move forward however you want. And so it's really just being able to come out of that comfort zone and be comfortable with changes and being flexible with things that are not going to be routine and structured every day. Like, some people get crazy if their structure or routine is interrupted, and especially at work. And I have to tell people, like, you know, be uncomfortable for a minute. Be flexible, because you may have 10 things on your list to do, right? But something may happen, and then what? You have to deal with the immediacy of it, right? Then just like life, if you have to move because of a flood or whatever the case may be, if something happens to a family member, you have to go in and you have to take care of them, and vice versa. So it's just get comfortable with being uncomfortable, and which allows growth to happen. I don't think there's no one person, not even a plan or anything, that stays stagnant.
Right. Life is always changing.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, we have kids, so you look at the development. It goes by quick. Nothing changes. I mean, nothing stays the same, right? Not even the way they look. It's like 1 minute they're looking like one parent, another family member. You can see the DNA working, So.
Yeah, that is true. I've noticed that. And I mean, I have one, I swear I wish I could stop time, because it goes by way too fast.
Yep, absolutely. Yep. What are your takes on mental health, though? Because you're doing like groups and stuff now, right?
Yes. I mean, I see so much, and then like I try to preach things, but then it's tough, like when I'm going through them. Like, then, because I know the way I am, I still shut down sometimes, and I don't want to open up about it, but then I'll be sitting there trying to tell people they should do it. But that's why when I wrote the last book, The Battling Demons, I said, if you can't talk about it, try to find a creative way of expressing yourself, whether it's through art, whether it's through music, whether it's through journaling. And
Absolutely.
I noticed a few of the people that I've worked with, like, that's helped. Like, they've been able to find different things that made them feel comfortable and made them happy.
Right. Right. Absolutely. I think it's hard, because we always say practice what you preach. And, therapists, we really do. I mean, not all therapists have it together now. Like, it's hard, and we go through our rough times too. Therapists have therapists. And they even tell us in grad school, like, go see a therapist, put yourself in the place of the client. It's important, because if you don't have it together, you can't possibly pour into someone else. And it goes to say, like, if I had a bad week, I might have to cancel my sessions, because there's no way I'm going to be present with my clients. I mean, for situations where we're out there and we're preaching and we're running groups and, we're giving therapy, and then in the back of our mind, we're like, man, we should do that. That's okay, right? Because we reflect back too. I mean, we don't take away from the client, but I think it's always best to kind of reflect back and say, these are things that remind me of what I could be doing for myself. And I think that's a lot of when we give back and we pour into others, that's also a constant reminder of us getting it together. It's like when I worked at the last place and I was a director for a partial hospitalization program, you know, I would do a group with the addicts there, and I would always put them in a place of I would have them do like a poster, and it's like, how would you give back? And that also helps you. So giving back also gives back to yourself. If it makes sense, it reflects back. So they would put themselves in situations where they would project a bit. It's a little psychological trick, but they would project a bit, but they felt good because it was always a constant reminder of what they should be doing for themselves.
Okay.
And that's okay because keeps you in line. It's like, well, if I'm telling my client to do that, then I should be doing this too.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like, you know, so it's good because it keeps us focused, you know, it keeps us in place, and we can easily fall out of place, you know, if we don't check ourselves sometimes, and that's okay.
Now, I just thought about something when you were talking about that too. Um, Now, what would you think about? I know there's therapy, but a support group, because with a therapist, you have somebody that's kind of like they know behaviors and emotions, but they're looking at you from the outside. Now, within a support group, you have other people who are going to be able to relate to you and probably will be able to help you with things, and you guys all like build that sense of unity together.
That community. Oh boy, I love this question because I think the individual therapy comes first before anyone gets into a group. And you can do both simultaneously. That's a lot. That's what we do at partial hospitalization. We'll pull them out during groups hours and talk to them because group is Monday through Friday from like 9 to 2:30. Some people go half day 9 to 12. But some people are not ready for the group just because it can be overwhelming for them. Some people have social anxiety. Maybe they're getting triggered by what other people are saying and they're not ready. But for those who are looking to feel like they're not like alienated or isolated and like they're the only one, I think that's good that you can relate to other people. You guys can share a common interest. You know you're not alone. I think the individual therapy piece is to really get below the surface. And I tell a lot of people in group, you know, hey, talk about whatever you can, but keep it above surface. And anything deeper than that, we can pull you for individual therapy, or you should be talking to your individual therapist about it, just to get deeper. So a good sense of community is to make people feel like they're not alone and that they're not the only one, because a lot of people do. And I have to tell a lot of my clients, like, you're not the only one going through this. There are a lot of people going through it. Individual therapy is great for really digging deep and not putting all your stuff out there in front of the group, because you don't know how people are going to take it. And I always tell my clients, be careful who you say to people, like who you trust. Like there's some people that I will tell certain things to, and then there's some people I would definitely not. And because that's emotional safety, and so you want to create a safe emotional space for yourself and others. So that's really what the groups are about too.
Okay. Now, is there anything else that you have going on that you would like the viewers to know about?
I mean, I'm trying to get other things going on. I just, being in the mental health field. I mean, for now, I'm just on the radio, 97.9. Well, Talking Wellness, Worcester's Community Connection. That's Tuesdays at 5. And then there's a lot going on with being a program director or clinical director. So I really dedicate a good portion of my life to that. I'm also an individual therapist on Psych Wellness. So I just do, and that's part-time after hours. So I do that remotely. I'm trying to get into other things. Like it hasn't started up yet, maybe starting like my own little merchandising store. Really just, ethnic type of material, like t-shirts, really kind of symbolizing Black mental health, cultural mental health, that sort of thing, and really getting that out there, because I don't think there's not a lot of things that are representing that, and whether it be journals too. I mean, I thought about a good journal idea, like really pictures, illustrations of ethnic, families and people, and visuals really help people write. Yeah. So. And that's the whole thing where you have a candle nearby, and then you have like something that reminds you of something, and then you can write things that motivate people, because I always give homework for journals, right? And some people have a hard time journaling. So some people need journal prompts. So really kind of putting things in there like that can allow people to relate.
Okay.
I haven't started it yet, though. That it's a slow working progress. I mean, once I do it, I really want to take off, but I've started.
That's a great idea, though.
Yeah. And I'll put that information out there to you when I do get it up and going. I just want to make sure I'm going about it a certain way. But I've been in the field long enough and I've dealt with different cultures to know that people need to know that it's okay, because people still stigmatize themselves with mental health. They need to know it's okay and, have a nice fancy outfit to wear to say, I'm the best, I'm doing great, and then have an illustration that matches that attitude, right? So.
Yeah, that's nice. Now, do you want to let the viewers know how they can reach you?
Yep. So you can reach me at Siobhan Jenkins, so SHAV as in Victor, O-N as in Nancy, Jenkins, JENKIN as in Nancy, S as in Sam at AOL.com. So that's my personal email, and that's fine. Because I have more than one email, and I'm like, just use my personal one, and then I can redirect you to like whatever services you want.
Okay. Do you have any social media that you want to put out there, or you on social media?
I'm not big like that on social media. Only Talking Wellness, and that's WUTY.org, Worcester's Community Connection. And that's like on Facebook. So you would find like the series of Talking Wellnesses on the show.
Okay.
But I'm not out there big yet on social media.
Well, once you start,
Yeah.
I mean, it'll end up taking off from there because you already have the radio episodes out there.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to it. There's a lot behind it and really just getting that information out there. So, and being licensed, being careful with the content and that sort of thing. So,
Okay. Now, I hope this episode was able to show you that mental health is a serious thing that a lot of people deal with. I'd like to thank my special guest again.
Siobhan Myers, LMHC, NCC.
Now, my name is Marcus Whitley, and this is Good Behavior. So until the next episode.